Hello, and welcome to our event today with Lisa Scottoline. My name is Louisa Smith, and I am the buying director for Book Passage Bookstore and the very lucky host for today's event. I would first like to thank all of you for tuning in. We know you have lots of options for online events these days, and we so appreciate your support for Book Passage and our favorite authors by choosing to spend your time with us. Book Passage has a robust speaker series, and we are now holding events both in-store and online. I hope you will have a moment after today's conversation to take a look at our calendar on our website and find out about all the exciting events we have coming up soon. Book Passage is able to offer these events in no small part due to the support of our customers, both near and far. So thank you. Book Passage has also been deeply involved with the mystery writing community for years through our author events, our annual Mystery Writers Convention, and also simply due to the fact that many of us, myself included, are devoted mystery fans. And one of our all-time favorite authors is none other than Lisa Scottoline. Lisa drew on her experience as a trial lawyer to write her first book, Everywhere That Mary Went, which was nominated for an Edgar, and she hasn't looked back since. Today, she is a New York Times bestselling author of 32 novels and has over 30 million copies of her books in print. She has written series thrillers, standalone thrillers, historical novels, and nonfiction. She also writes a weekly column with her very, very talented daughter, Francesca Serratelli, who has her own fabulous novel, The Ghosts of Harvard. In addition to writing books, Lisa reviews popular fiction and nonfiction, and her reviews have appeared in the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Philadelphia Inquirer. Lisa has served as president of Mystery Writers of America and has taught a course she developed, Justice in Fiction, at the University of Pennsylvania's Law School, her alma mater. Lisa is also a lover of cookies, dogs, and mysteries, so a woman after my own heart. Today, we are thrilled to celebrate the publication of her latest thriller, What Happened to the Bennetts? The Bennetts are a suburban family whose life takes a horrifying turn on a dark stretch of road as they returned home from a high school field hockey game. Later that awful night, the family receive a visit from the FBI. The agents tell them that the Bennetts are now in the crosshairs of a dangerous drug trafficking organization. And now they will have to leave all they know behind in order to save their lives. Before we begin, I want to mention that there will be a link posted in the chat for this heart-pounding thriller. One of the best parts of these live events is getting to ask your own questions of the authors. So don't be shy. If you have questions, please put them in the chat and hopefully we will have time to get to as many of those as possible. And with that, I would love to welcome Lisa to the show. Hi.
Louisa, it's so great to see you again. And I am so honored to be at Book Passage. I wish I could be there in person. The beautiful Ferry Street, the Corte Madera, these lovely, lovely locations. And you're just one of the best indies in the whole country. So I hope everybody who's here tonight know that. I expect they do because I know your mailing list is so robust and your organization is basically a well-oiled machine, but in a good way, in a friendly way. And I'm just super grateful to be here and so happy to talk to you, whom I adore.
Oh, thank you.
We go back, girl. We go back.
We go way back. We shouldn't tell anybody how far back we go.
No, we shouldn't.
We should. And I so love this book. First of all, congratulations. It is, I mean, it starts with a bang. You are just completely hooked from the opening scene and with what happens to this family. And that made me think immediately that you've written about families in difficult situations quite a bit with your books. And is that something that you love? What I love about it. Let me start out with that. What I love about when you write about families is how you bring different people's responses to a situation you can't imagine, you know, and you get to see all these different ways of processing something that's unimaginable that has happened to you. Is that something that you thought about when you started this book?
Well, God, aren't you lovely? I mean, I think I should say yes, and then I sound brilliant, but you really said all the brilliant stuff. And the truth is, you know, the answer is kind of no. It's because I don't have an outline. You know, when people say, I know. It's, look, I'm divorced twice. What I do is I fall in love. Hi, I don't know any facts. I'm just feeling really good. And so then I have to reverse. So when I write a novel, it's a little the same way. Like I tell you the idea for this book, and I'll break down what the answer is because I thought you said something so astute. I got the idea because I was being tailgated on a certain stretch of road right in my neighborhood, and I live in rural Pennsylvania. It's actually the part that I put in the book. I I didn't give the right street name, but the location is exactly the same. And I was being tailgated, and I said, well, what if this turned into a horrible carjacking and the carjacking went wrong? And then the next family, so that's the idea. But before that, I said to myself, we're supposed to show and not tell, right? Mm-hmm. And what you said was something about the way you react, the way people react to a stimulus, let's say that, because that sounds really smart. But it's really more, I'm trying to impress you, Louis, and all these smarts. But it's really more like when you're getting tailgated, what is your reaction? I have a car full of people. And I said, well, we can show the reader really quick who they are by how they react. So the wife, she's on Facebook, they're driving home from a field hockey game, because I played field hockey. So I read what you know, right? I'm a lousy field hockey player, but I did. I'm scrappy. You're not surprised. And so they do the Facebook. She's posting pictures on Facebook, on Instagram. The kids are in the backseat. She's like, honey, let's get home. Because she's like a lot of women like me, got the things to do list. We need to get home. We need to let the dog out. We need to do this. This kid has this homework. It's task oriented. Kids in the backseat. The girl's on the but she's having fun. The boy's like, Dad, let's smoke them. They got a new car. They got a Mercedes. The dad's a little uncomfortable about that. And basically the bottom line is I thought, because my dad mattered so much to me. And I'm such a fan of your father, by the way, that I felt that my dad was very, I channeled my dad for this main character, Jason Bennett, because Jason Bennett, when he's getting tailgated, he's not road rage kind of guy. He would have moved over, but he can't on this stretch of road, as I couldn't on that same stretch of road. But he's bugged a little because why? Because he wants to enjoy the ride. It's not really that he's a right fighter, as Dr. Phil would say, or whatever pop psych, it's really more that he just wants to enjoy himself. And I'm a little like that. Like I leave a half an hour to go anyway. Anyways, the longest answer ever. But I thought, I had him say his piece, say why he's not going somewhere, and sort of have him think to himself, I'm a scenic route kind of guy. Right. And honestly, I've never really even done that. I've never had a character label themselves, but a little bit, he's so sweet. There's this talkativeness to him. And that was so much like my father, who in a way, dads are so important. My dad was so important to me, but in an unassuming way. In a family of some real mouthy broads, my mother, me, my daughter, God bless her. And that was basically, my dad was this mellow center and kept us happy, centered, and occasionally calm. And so that's what he does. And so you want this to work as a top line thriller. What's going to happen on a turn, blah, blah, blah. But really what I want, I think what readers, especially people who come to you guys want, is something deeper than that. It's interesting because I wrote historical fiction in Eternal last time, and that was the first time I'd done that in like 30 books, 30 years. And I think a little of this book is different because of that. In a weird way, I was like, give a little bit of this guy's history, like give his personal history, and do it with some economy, which isn't my usual style. My usual style's right? But it was, I used that tailgating situation to sort of examine character because things were going to happen quickly and what he is going to have to learn, his task, his arc, if you will. But everyone in this family has layers, as you so kindly point out, and that he is going to have to go from being a scenic route kind of guy, which is a luxury you have when you're not in crisis. Right? Like there's no scenic route guys when the pandemic starts. And right, I mean, when I did Eternal, I was kind of nervous at first because I'm always nervous and intimidated and vaguely insecure. I was like, you can't do that. And then I was like, well, try. But I thought part of it intimidating because it was historical fiction. And I said, but just remember, when you're going through a period that's historically significant, you don't know it. Like we didn't know it last March. You just live day to day. And then I applied that same principle to this book, which is here's Jason Bennett. He doesn't know what he's about to undergo. It's just going to happen to him and he's going to have to keep up and then eventually come from behind and eventually take the lead, which doesn't come easily to him. Not that he's a big mouse, but ultimately, and then I'll shut up. Your question is, what's a hero? Your question is, what's a man? You want to deal with that, even in our crime fiction genre, so to speak. And you really have to deal with those larger questions because your character will. At least that's what I think.
Well, you said something so interesting, which is which is really making me rethink a lot of things I think about, because I often say to people, because I am a huge mystery reader, and some people will say, oh, I don't read mysteries. And I reply, every book's a mystery, because you're always trying to figure out the why. Every book's a mystery. And what you just said is every book's a historical book, because you never know. Like that these, at some point I was going to ask, and we might as well talk about it right now. You have written a number of different genres, and we do categorize them in part because we're a store and we have to figure out sort of word, but they aren't necessarily true. Things don't fall neatly within these. What are things you have learned from writing one genre or another? What are differences between them? What are things that are the same? Do they inform each other now that you've done all these genres?
I love what you said, that idea that every book is a mystery and every book is historical. And I think that is really insightful. And I think it's really true. And they do inform each other. But, I live alone. I sit in my house. I love to read. That's my research collection. That's not every room has books. My sign collection is the whole family room. I love books so much. And, but I also love popular culture, and I draw from all of it, as we all do. Mm-hmm. And so I always go back to Francis Ford Coppola's quote from The Godfather. He said, nothing in my movies ever happened, but all of it is true. And that's profound because it's my touchstone. So that's why I think it sort of reinforces this point we're making, that the distinction between the genre, well, I don't even think there's distinctions. I decided there were distinctions without differences, which is lawyer talk for form over substance. Because honestly, as a person who's written nonfiction humor, and thank you for being so supportive of those books, they're a compendium from my Sunday Inquirer columns of the past almost 15 years now with my daughter, Francesca, is that I'm starting to think that there's not even, I know why we got to put them on shelves, but I'm not even sure there's a meaningful distinction between fiction and non. Because in fiction, you're trying to write some emotional truth, and there is always literal truth underlying it. And there's literal truth in What Happened to the Bennetts. How does WITSEC operate? Tell me about location, which is something maybe we'll talk about. Setting, how does it work? Why does it matter? But in nonfiction, you're telling some emotional truth too. I tell funny stories about, I discovering my first gray chin hair and realizing I'm turning into an Amish man. Like, whoa, shit, somebody has to say that out loud. Like, I wish someone told me, like, I did pluck for you, Louisa, because damn it, it's book passage and you bring your A game, and that's the truth. You have to tell the truth. You have to tell the truth in whatever you write, whether it's fiction or nonfiction. You got to lay it bare and not, look, am I embarrassed anymore? No. The world didn't end when I told you all this history, all the secrets, all the stuff. Now it's my house. Who cares? It only brings us closer to each other. So I think you're really onto something. I think these things are illusionary and illusory, and they, an illusion, I guess. Illusory, that's the wrong word. SATs.
We're going to make new definitions for this.
God, of course we can.
Well, you brought up being a lawyer, and you brought up Jason. I would love to talk more about Jason because he has such an interesting arc. And I love that you just brought up The Godfather. So where to start with how much you want to talk about this wonderful character, which, first of all, he is a court reporter.
Yes.
Brilliant. You make a mystery starting a court reporter. None of us have really thought, I haven't thought much about that role, but they're always in the room when it happens. It takes a certain personality. They know a lot about law. He starts off in this box. And
right.
So can you tell me first how you were inspired to do that? And then we can talk more about his transition through the book.
Well, and that's so great to bring that up, because partly having been a lawyer and been in those rooms and taken depositions and defended depositions or been in proceedings, the court report, I'm friendly with all court reporters. First off, because they're mostly Italian and that's it. Like, we recognize each other by the nose. So it's, but also it's interesting because they know who's lying in the room, because there's always somebody lying in the room, whether it's the lawyer, whether it's the witness. The only person, interestingly, who doesn't lie in that room is the court reporter, because his job is to write. I love these layers of truth, and that his job is to write down, he warrants that what he heard was true and correct. But I think it's also interesting because, secretly I do want to play with this idea of a hero. I go to all the Marvel movies. I go, why does a Marvel movie make $500 million, but Coda doesn't? And I love them both, honestly. And I think a little, we're exploring notions of power. So I saw the last Superman, and there was not just one Superman, but three. How much can you amp this up, And so you go, when you have a hero who's a court reporter, I sort of wanted to also, I didn't want him to come off high powered. I didn't want you to go, oh, wow, Superman. I want him to be real. And what I've learned in this court system, and people know it because it rings true, because it is true, that there are so many people who are in the legal profession in some manner or another, supportive function, court reporter, bailiff, paralegal. I was a paralegal before I went to law school. I've been an adjunct law professor. There's a lot of people who know a lot who don't get spotlights, who don't choose spotlights. And I wanted to explore that guy and not let us think less of him. He doesn't have to be super trial lawyer, blah, blah, blah. And I've done characters like that. I wanted somebody different. I wanted somebody more like my dad.
Oh, and he's a wonderful character. And what I loved what you did is you took the things that made him special in the role that he was. His ability to read lips, his ability to sort of fade into the background, to really clearly assess a situation that you wouldn't necessarily name hero traits, and you made those strengths. You didn't make him change into all of a sudden he's super strong and all these sorts of things. He is who he is and is still a hero as he is.
Oh, that's kind of you to say. That was hard because he's called upon to do things. But the truth is, I figured it out. I mean, if I can figure it out, he can figure it out. He had no special, and I kind of love that. And I think, a little bit to segue into setting, because it relates to him. Because I thought after Internal, which was spanned 20 years and 3 different families and different points of view, I was like, oh, let's go home again. Thriller land, you get narrower focus, not less. I don't cop to any less than, more than, but narrower, focused, one family, one viewpoint, 3 days, go. And you're like, and you need caffeine. You need a lot of Dunkin' Donuts with extra sugar and extra. But a little bit, I said, well, let's think about him, because I live on a farm now, but he's a farm boy. He has made himself, and he's a self-made guy, but he grew up on a farm in Hershey, Pennsylvania. And what happens is that he gets transported in the application phase of the program to Delaware. And I said, I'm driving around Delaware in the pandemic with a mask, And I said, well, this is pick this location, because it was actually the genius Martin Cruz Smith. I must tell this because, we learned so much from other authors, and I learn every time I read something. And I am such a fan of your dad, Gorky Park. And I'll never forget that I read Havana. And I ran into your dad on a panel in Sydney, Australia, at the Writers' Festival. And I didn't know it, but bear with me, because this is this is going to be a story about a brilliant author, not me, okay? And so he's so kind and welcoming. And at some point we got, we had a quiet moment. I said, I really love your books. And I had just read Havana. And I said, but I have to tell you, you did something I've never seen an author do, and I'm curious why. And the first couple of pages are about Havana. And it's actually interesting because I've never been there and still haven't been there, but it was such a good setting. And I said, and then the character walks in. He said, oh yeah, I did do that. And he has a little sly look in his dark eyes, which look so much like your dark eyes. And I said, Martin, that was pretty friggin' cool. And I said, but weren't you nervous? I said, why did you do that though? He said, because if I can establish this setting with absolute credibility and specificity, you will believe in the character who walks in the door, and you will place him there. And I was like, I never forgot it. It's super insightful. And it really taught me, also reinforced this idea in people who are reading, or saw people who are writing take a lesson. But if you're just reading too, notice these choices that authors make, because it made me very, very aware. I tended to set books in Philadelphia because I'm from here. But I also was like, pay more attention. He's right. So then in this book, I was like, send this Jason Bennett, who's a terra firma kind of guy also. He's a Pennsylvania rolling farmlands. It's really true. Put him in Delaware. And now in Delaware where the salt marshes are, like on the cover of the book. It really does look like this. At night, it looks like this. I took pictures. And it's actually a salt marsh for maybe 2 seconds. It's a saltwater marsh, and it's tidal. so that the salt water comes in, unfortunately, because of global warming, and kills the nearby forests. When I go there, you find that the forest is dead. It's called a ghost forest. You can't even make this up. If someone hands this to you and you don't put it in a book, you're guilty of literary malpractice. Like you should just go right to like jail. And at night, I described it in the book. What happens is the salt water kills the trees. They turn white, denuded of branches. They don't fall over. It looks like bones coming out of water. You're like, oh shit. Like it's scary. And it felt like a ghost town because it was a beach town off season and all of this stuff. And they have a ghost in their house, obviously. It really helped atmospheric. And I thought, you are Martin Cruz smithing this because you really got use the setting. I used the setting.
The setting was amazing. And I love and I really was aware when I was reading it, how much you brought all the senses into it. You hear the sounds of the different animals, you get the sense of the smell, you get the sense of what the water feels like. I think at some point you describe it almost like lightning strikes, they're stuck in the water. I mean, I could visualize the ghost forest is remarkable, but it's not just, you don't just do it in a remarkable place like a ghost forest. You do it in the diner. You do it in a cab of a big rig. You do it in, you do it in all the places. I really believe them. I was laughing because I think what my dad often says is like, if you tell me the source of light, where the light is coming from in a room, then I can tell you what the room is, what the setting is. And for you, I felt a little bit like,
wow,
if I could tell you what somebody wants to eat right now, they would, do you want your fish tacos, or is it pizza night, or maybe it's scrambled eggs? Like, I felt like there were these details about a person that you brought out that made that person come alive. And it was never telling me that this is this is actually a soft-hearted person that looks big and scary. It was that, they loved animals and they saved a box turtle on a busy freeway. It was those kinds of things.
Yeah. Oh, that's so
and it brought all the characters to life, not just Jason, but every single person he interacted with really felt fully formed, was not an aside, was really
that's very kind
there on the page.
Yeah, characters matter so much. And really the setting for him was about the dislocation he feels. If that worked, that I paid attention because it was unfamiliar to me. And interestingly, I went there during the pandemic for the research. So I'm driving around, I get out of the car. I filmed the video so you can see it on my website if you want to see. And that was the time, remember that early on in the pandemic when there was like the nature's taking over narrative?
Yeah.
Well, that was where we were. And I was walking on this beach and all of a sudden a blue heron, okay, came out of nowhere and was soared by. And it was like a religious experience. I just was like, and I put it in the book. I don't know if that bird would have been there when there were more people. And you know how when you're in a no location, for him, it's literally, if he's terra firma, the ground beneath his feet is eroding. It's tidal. And so I really just tried to think about everything you could think about and narrow the focus. And then, Elmore Leonard, the great, says he leaves out the part that people skip. I love that. So basically, when I go through the first draft, I had all of that detail out and I just said, okay, pare it down to just what you need to make the book move as fast as you can.
Oh, it does move fast.
Thank you. But I really did work on those details. That's why I love our genre, because I do think we live in such a wonderful time and readers are so smart and in a way ask so much of us in a good way. Mm-hmm. They don't want a, sort of an empty thriller with cardboard characters. That's just, no one wants that anymore. No. If they ever did. And it's really great to be writing now and to be reading now and feel that.
Well, I think it's really interesting that you did a witness protection novel during the pandemic when people were isolated, and you did one where people were extremely isolated. I mean, at least we could have gotten on the phone and talked to each other. Like, they can't communicate with anybody. How did you do that research, and how did you start out knowing you wanted to have that in the book, or did it evolve that's what was going to happen to this family?
No, it really evolved. I mean, I sort of said, that's what would happen. Because I always sort of play by the rules. I kind of know the law for the most part. But then I got surprises a little bit. Like when I go to I happen to know a guy in the FBI who was in the WITSEC program. So, I mean, if you write 30 books over 30 years, you're going to start to know some people. And you go, So of course you have all your stupid, you watched Steve Martin in My Blue Heaven or whatever.
I love that movie.
I love that movie.
Love that movie.
That's a great movie. Okay, so I say to my FBI guy, so you'd send this family to Arizona, right? He said, no, we'd send them to Delaware. I'm like, Delaware is 15 minutes from my house. Like, what the hell? That's really like, you guys suck, kind of. And that was also part of it too, that a little bit, here's the hard part. Nobody wants to talk about politics, and I don't either. This isn't about politics. But as you correctly pointed out, I think every single one of my books is about family and love and justice. Those are my themes. I don't go in that way. I just reversed. I looked at myself like an English mirror, go, what are the leitmotifs, and John Cheever, oh, it's this. Somehow we're in Connecticut, like that. So I go, all right. So basically you're talking about family. Oh, no, I forgot my point because I got so confused.
The WITSAC program, My Blue Heaven, the different kinds of people that are, I know, the people, how about this? The people that are usually in the WITSAC program versus having a family.
I think that is it. That's right, because it was also like the WITSAC it's close to what it was, but I can't remember. The WITSAC program, thank you though. The WITSAC program was designed for criminals. Oh, I know what it is. We're there. It segues into it. So when you put a criminal in isolation, A, he doesn't mind because you're saving his life. B, you're giving him money. And C, he doesn't have all these connections. He ain't on Instagram. His kids ain't on Snapchat, all that crap, right? But for me, the hard part, that's as a person who cares about justice, we are in a really turbulent time. I looked at this and I follow everything, right? And so for a long time, I despair because I think whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, you are not as happy with the Supreme Court as you were 20 years ago. 20 years ago, you couldn't name one of them. Now you're like, I want that guy out. True of the FBI as well. We have views now. We have views of the court system. We understand that there's disparate application of justice vis-a-vis race, vis-a-vis socioeconomic status, vis-a-vis class, vis-a-vis geography. Our view of justice is very, very, I'm trying to put it in a positive way. I'll tell you what, it can't put it in a positive way. It's complected, it's stressful, it's full of agita. That's an Italian for giving you a stomachache, right? We're stressed.
Yeah.
The only good example to me is that I think it means that we're more active, and that's a good thing. You want people involved in democracy. You want people to read. That's part of the reason we want bookstores to exist, especially ones like this. It's true. I think there is a direct line. But when you write a thriller in that milieu, you cannot BS people, and you shouldn't, and I wouldn't. So that paradigm of law leading to justice isn't going to happen. We know that doesn't happen. Law can thwart justice. It can be disconnected from justice. Law could enact injustice. And when all of these institutions fail Jason, as they inevitably will, because that's what happened in the book, I didn't plan it, that's what would really happen.
Yeah.
You realize some of these interests of these institutions are not necessarily looking out for him. He has to step into that vacuum and fill it, so that at some point, I think I had him think maybe a hero is just a guy who solves a problem, which is sort of not the way we look at hero. We want an all-powerful, but I want us to look elsewhere because I think men deserve better. And frankly, so do women.
Yeah. Well, it's the difference between waiting for somebody to come in versus realizing it's something that you could be.
Yes.
And
yes,
he's interesting because he's seen justice from one angle. It was very clear cut, good guys, bad guys.
Right.
And all of a sudden, it's not so much. You mentioned The Godfather earlier. There are maybe good bad guys and bad good guys.
Right.
And he sort of has to make this full break in order to then figure out where he lands in that spectrum.
Right. And to a certain extent, I'm starting to think that anything I write and probably anything I read is just mirroring the trials we're going through. And it's a little bit of a pep talk between covers. You're going to get through this. I thought of it with Eternal because, you work through, fascism under Mussolini, which was so awful, and where law promulgates injustice, and then the Nazi occupation. And then I ended up this book, and you don't have to have read it for me to just tell the story real quick. Here I am at the end of this book. I have a minor character who's the only one to make a speech. Now, Anybody knows that that's probably malpractice there. Like, you're going to lose your job if no one even knows this character and she has to give a big speech. I was like, oh no. And then I just go, lean in, kid. Because partly I go, well, she's always cooking. So she looks in the refrigerator. And like all of us, she says, I wanted to make poppy seed cake, but of course I don't have any lemon. So then she kind of says, what can I make with what I have? And I thought that's a kind of a very in character analogy for what we go through. And it's a sort of a way to say survival in a more homespun, but more tactile way to me that feels more authentic. And that's Jason's problem too. I'll probably be the problem of every book I write till I die. It's a little grim, but but I'm just trying to get through the next day, just like everybody else.
I mean, it makes sense that is the problem. Like, maybe that's the problem in every book almost. What can these characters do with what they have? That actually, I think, is probably what you could say about almost every book that we're reading. That's really interesting. I hadn't thought about that.
You're such a smarty. We're figuring this out, man. We are figuring this out. Ask us anything.
Exactly. I mean, it's such a good book, and it is complex. I mean, there are twists and counter twists, but you are not a plotter. You're a pantser.
I know.
And how you do it. How do you keep that straight? I would be worried that I'd lose the thread. How do you do that?
You know what? I worry that I can't figure it out. Yeah. I mean, that's why, the first draft, Hemingway says, write drunk, edit sober. That's, okay. I'm not drunk, but I basically try to get it down. But my whole thing, first draft, is I don't worry about like which verb I'm using, which is the kind of thing I love to think about, but I really do. But it's really more what would happen next. And that's very, very hard. I realize I feel very lucky and very grateful every day, honestly, but more and more lately in that I'm, when you write, and you must know this from living with your dad, and just, you're to a certain extent, you're preoccupied. Like I said to myself today, you know what's going on with you? You're in the middle of something. That's what happens in first draft. You're in the middle of something. So you kind of want to get back to it. You kind of have a problem to solve. And it's why I'm so lucky to have a life in books, both reading them and writing them, because it's a constant challenge. Yeah. And I don't know how to solve it. You walk the dogs. You hope that's what he would do. He's just you. So think really, 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 really hard. Wow. And at one point he had to get a message to somebody. And I was like, well, he works in an office. What would he do? And I go, well, he would probably send a FedEx. And I was like, Lisa, really? A FedEx and a thriller? Your main character is going to send a FedEx? And then I walk up FedEx and I go, why the hell not? That's exactly what he would do. And it would work. That's his point of reference. As you say, he's not going to, get out a pair of nunchucks. That's not who he is. That isn't who we are. And to inspire us, he has to be like us.
It's interesting that you brought up like how you communicate. Something I think about a lot in mysteries, but the evolution of technology and how we are constantly able to be in contact, or people know where we are or see things, that has really affected the mystery genre, probably more than almost any other, besides science fiction, I suppose, but it's really affected how you write these mysteries. It's why Cara Black is brilliant in setting her mysteries all back 10 years so she can always be ahead of whatever the technology is. But do you feel that change when you're writing? Like, how it's interesting because in Witsack, they had to get rid of all that. So in some way, you made a situation where there wasn't this constant being in contact. But do you think about that? But then
yes, they did, because then they can observe. And it was partly when, look, I've never had a novel before where, they can see what's going on. They just can't post. And so they can be driven crazy. And you see in the absence of a narrative, what happened to the Bennetts. Her friends are going to the police. Their neighbors are talking. Imagine if your neighbors just disappear. I just couldn't believe that this is what we do to people, but that is what we do. Her mom's left behind. But I also just came up with, because I live in the world too, I follow crime blogs. I mean, I love democracy. I just do. And I love all the changes in it. I love that we are more active. I love that there's normal people who will subpoena records or go badger people or ask police, and police, no matter how hard they try, their budgets are limited. So there are actual people online solving real crimes. You can watch them on Lifetime. You can watch them on all those true crime shows. And I thought, well, that would happen here. I mean, that would clearly happen. What effect does that have? You know, how, and you see it, you know, that happens with the legal process all the time, that these extraneous things, social media, blogging, they're intruding and adding and solving, but also really messing up, which is kind of what happens to the Bennetts. And I've never had that before, but I thought, all right.
I love that you did the true crime blogger, because it sort of fills that role of the journalist that you see in mysteries, but also he's an amateur and he doesn't have to answer to anybody, and he's flying by the seat of his pants and he's just following things around and he's getting things wrong. He's getting some things surprisingly right. Like, it is really interesting in a way, because a journalist you'd have to wait till the next day to see what was happening. He'd have to get it approved by his editor, I'm assuming. And
yeah, exactly. No, right.
This guy doesn't have to do that. So everything's just out there immediately. And it's a really interesting sort of counterpoint to what they're going through, the narrative that he's putting out about what might have happened to them. And then you see what they are actually doing during that time.
I appreciate that. And you see how his narrative is very reasonable. You know, I didn't want him to be a jerk. He's not a jerk. No. And he's pretty right. And I kind of love, because I get so inspired too by those stories where, you know, a daughter goes missing and the mother searches for her. I mean, who doesn't? I mean, I read every one. You know, you want someone to care, and and I do love that. I think so much. All of us, you know, we're smarter than we think. We're more able than my girlfriends, especially. Like, that's what, you know, so long ago I started writing, because I wanted to see more women in the leads in crime fiction in particular. I was like, what? We're so strong. Why are we still pouring coffee in these books? And it's the same idea that we're so empowered to do so much with all this technology and with just sheer will. And that's what those crime vloggers are doing. And that's what Jason's doing too. Sometimes they're at cross purposes. Sometimes they're going to really thwart each other, but they're all trying to get to the same point for different reasons, but they're getting there. It's so heartening to me.
Oh, they are. But it brings up something that I'm always curious about. And this has more to do with how you write. When you have a couple characters, do you ever have that one character wants to take the book one way, another character wants to take the book a different direction? How do you resolve that? Does that happen? Because you have so many strong characters. I imagine it does.
You're kind to say that's a really good question, and it does happen. This is a little easier because it's his point of view. Mm-hmm. And, you know, sounds weird and strange, and it sounds old, but I let him talk. Like, sometimes I just let him talk. And when I get stuck like that, I have a dictation software. This is my computer.
Oh, wow.
I will actually say, I'll just let them have a dialogue and see where they're going and let it be. And then it might not survive. You know, I love Anne Lamott, and I love when she says, you know, give yourself permission to write a shitty first draft. I quote her all the time to people. I quote her to myself. So yeah, I have to watch that because I ride horses. I'm very bad at it. I just try to stay on top. I've been doing it. My daughter's good at it, but I'm bad at it. And I always think, this is so queer, I don't know what I'm telling you, but there are reins. You have to control this animal. You don't want to do it harshly. You're in a relationship with this animal. I love horses. I love them. So it's a pretty good analogy that no one can relate to. Thanks, Liz. But you have to control it. But not in the beginning. The whole thing about writing, and anyone listening, I really would encourage you. There's no right way to do it, but however you want to do it. And the truth is, nobody sees that first draft. So let it run, see where it goes. And then later you bring I always think I'm channeling my inner bitch. I do. I just go to each sentence and go, justify yourself. Because you can't repeat yourself. God bless people, because nowadays I think more and more read in a gulp. I read in a gulp. If I have 3 hours, leave me alone, which is great because no one here to bother me, and I get to read. And if you've told me something on page 30, you do not need to tell me again on 60. And so all of that has to work together to just have an impact and take out the dross so that it can go forward.
Thank you for saying that, because that's something that always bothers me when I read a book and they have to tell me something about a place or a character every single time that person's in the room or something happens. Like, because I think you're right. People nowadays are reading all at once, and, you know, they are smart enough to remember from one chapter to the next.
Yeah, they really, really are. Yeah. They really, really are.
And it makes you aware of the writer. And in your books, you are lost in the place. You never have a moment of like, oh, Lisa said that, like it's not. So I think that's really smart that you do it that way.
Oh, thank you for that.
Do you do a ton of research when you're doing these books, or do you just write the draft first and then go back with the research? Or do you do the research first and then?
I do nothing in any orderly fashion whatsoever. I wish I did. I wouldn't be quite so great. But I do it as I need it, because I'll be, oh my God, I need to know more about this. Sometimes, and if you're writing, sometimes when you spin your wheels, it's because you need research and you don't know it yet. I've learned that now. So what would happen in the program? What do they actually do? How much do you actually get a month? How long do they pay you for? What devices can you use and what not? And then when, I don't want to give away the truth, but when things start to get critical, how do these institutions react? Mm-hmm. And, they react institutionally, which is both true, but also horrifying. And that was hard research questions. Some of these questions I was asking, my WITSEX guys going, well, we never had to deal with that. And I said, I know what you would do. And he said, yeah, that's probably what you would do. But you got to find out the answers. Because I think so many of us, I love to relearn when I read books. Like I just learn about Havana. I learn about a place I can't go. I learn about procedure. I learn about history. We're all just educating ourselves, really. Readers, whether we have that impulse, I think we do. Don't you think people read to learn a little bit?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's my favorite way to learn.
It's my favorite way to learn too.
My favorite way to learn. That's how I learn almost everything.
The other day, somebody said, well, I only read nonfiction so I can learn things. I said, oh, pal, you're missing the boat. I learned so much from fiction. So much from fiction.
I always make the staff who are devoted nonfiction readers, I make them furious, because the highest praise I give nonfiction is it reads like fiction. And they always say, that's not like
that's true.
But I love it when I get in a nonfiction story and it just goes,
I felt that about The Hot Zone. I read The Hot Zone. I was like, I can't put this down.
Yeah.
There was another one, I think it was called Pilgrim or something like that. I'm like, this is excellent.
Yeah.
I mean, just woo.
Yeah. Woof. So are you going to write another historical fiction?
I am. I'm in the middle of one now. I'm so jazzed.
Oh, wow.
I've lost my damn mind. I know. It's called Sacred, and it's the story of 1800s Sicily in the 1800s.
Wow.
And it's about the rise of the mafia vis-a-vis The Godfather, and looking at that connection between when do you need law? Because I think a lot about the purpose of law. Part of what we're going through now is that we're not sure where law is. We're a little lawless. Things aren't getting accounted for. Laws aren't getting enforced. I think everybody feels that way, regardless of political stripe. And you start to understand that the purpose of law, that no justice, no peace is a pretty good slogan. Because when there is justice, there is peace.
Right.
When there is order, there's justice, and there's peace, and there's love. And all of these things are as a whole. So when it's really interesting to look at an island back in a time pre-law, before law, at a time, by the way, when, you have something like the Spanish Inquisition that will exile Jews and Muslims from the island. You can't be there. What? So it really is kind of a terrific kind of a microcosm of lawlessness. Now what? Pretty cool. That was pretty fun. I'm enjoying it.
I love that justice it keeps coming out. It doesn't matter what you're writing about. Justice is the heart of what you're doing. And
well, what I'm starting to think is that justice and love and peace are just different words for the same feeling. Mm-hmm. Like, try to reverse engineer it to how you feel when you think the right thing happened, mm-hmm. or you feel love for family, or your heart is eased. That's the purpose of law. That's why it matters. And that's why you have to enforce it so that we are happier. We can engage in the pursuit of happiness when we know that certain things are legally followed. I don't like to say order because I think that sounds vaguely fascist. I'm talking about ordered affairs so that we don't commit violence against each other.
Right. When you know what to expect, when there is an outcome for behavior, you know how to behave.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And that's been taken away in these books, in a lot of your books, that sort of sense, and they have to sort of refine that.
Right. Or recreate it, which is a little what I think what we're doing now writ large.
Right.
We're trying to recreate our democracy, trying to understand how much we have to defend, and try to promulgate laws on our own, or urge Congress to do so that we can be happy.
Mm-hmm. Feel comfortable that we know what the rules are that we're going to abide by.
Yes.
So you're doing a historical next. Mm-hmm. Do we see more from your series work again, or are you going to be alternating here? Or?
I think obviously I have very little personal life, or I'm completely celibate. Ah! Is that too much information, Louisa? Let me get my little computer back, get my hair all woo! So I have way too much time on my hand. You know what I'm saying, girl? I'm teasing you. So I mean, I'm not really teasing you, but I am really teasing. But so yeah, I think I'm going to get back to those girls because I just feel so happy and lucky. Partly being a single mom and my daughter's all grown up. I feel like it's my time now. I know that sounds weird, but I get to do what. Why? So I love writing a series. It's an exploration of character over time. Look, I've known you for so long. I have my best friends. I have a best friend for 40 years. I love exploring character over time. You can do it. You could explore character over 3 days, or you could explore it over 20 years. And why limit yourself? I like, sometimes you like chocolate and sometimes you like vanilla, and I'm loving the variety. What a wonderful, I read the same way too. I'm sure probably you do. We love mystery and crime, but you read nonfiction or you read something that reads like that, or memoir. Mm-hmm. It's all delicious, and it's all part of the richness of the culture that we're in now.
Yeah, it is. I love that idea that this is a character. You're not talking about the series in terms of like, well, it's the thing that I do. It's this is the character over time versus this is a character over 3 days. This is the arc over 3 days for somebody. This is the arc over decades for others.
I think that's really true. You put that better than I did. I think maybe it's because I relate to people. I love people. I kind of miss people. So it's like, well, dogs are also great, but as our cats.
Always a good dog in your book.
I get these dogs in. I will shoehorn a dog into anything.
Do not hurt a dog in the book. That's all. Yeah. No hurt.
No. So, right. I forget where I was.
But I love it. I mean, your mysteries really are character centric. There's all these twists and turns, but it's really about the people that you write about. Do you have favorite characters that you've written over time here?
No. I really love them all. I really do. I mean, I do. I love Jason. I love his wife, who's different, Lucinda. I just love them all in the moment.
As you're writing them, they're the ones that you can feel that when you read it. You can feel that you really are enjoying your time with them.
Yes, that's weird, but it's kind of great. And they're flawed, but they're going through hell. And as are we all in one way or another.
And wouldn't it be terrible to be stuck with a perfect person? That sounds like my nightmare.
No, I totally agree.
We don't want to read that.
No, nobody does.
So you are writing another historical book. Are we going to see... Are we going to see Jason again, though, and his family at some point, do you think?
I don't know. I don't think so.
No?
But I don't know.
They're so great.
He's so new. And it's always an interesting problem, like in the series, when you have a character, they go through hardships. And there's a lot of hardships. Like sometimes you go, I need to give her a rest. Like she needs to rest because she's had a tough couple of years, but then so do people. And I must tell you, this is why part of the reason I feel so lucky is I read my email. I answer as much as I can. It's me on social media and it's all me. And you will get email and the person will say, I'm going through chemo and I've had 2 surgeries, and when anytime someone's saying 2 surgeries, 3 surgeries, you're going, that is requiring a resilience and a resolve and a strength. And it's the long haul. It's, I admire that. I think we have that in us. We're certainly finding it out. I thought the pandemic would be over. Now we have a war. You know, we will find that out one way or the other. And I admire that strength in us, so that when I see these characters who go through it over time, I'm always thinking, is that unrealistic? And then I'll get an email from somebody who, oh my God, that happened to me. And you're like, girl, you poor thing. You know,
that has to be the best compliment, to have somebody say that happened to me from something that happened in your book. That must feel incredible.
Well, you're kind, but you know what the compliment is? The compliment is to books. That's when I go, that's why books matter. That's the magic that books have. Because movies, they tell you what to look at and you see, and there's violence. But a book, you know, it's just you and the book, and you're either relating or not, and you're feeling or not, and you're just in your house. And I do think there's that connection, like I said before, of empathy. You know, I think people who read a lot really develop empathy book to book. I'll never forget Little B, completely off the point. I read Little B, different setting, different location, not a mystery. I was like weeping. You know, what is it like to be you? That's the question that every book poses. That's what I ask when I'm doing research. I say to, you know, a court reporter, what is it like to be you? What's it like to be in the room when you think the witness is lying? Would you look away? What do you do? What do you write? What do you, and what is it like to be you is the question that we are sort of living day to day. And I love that in like Bennetts, you can tell it in real time. And because it's in his viewpoint, he doesn't know, you know, like, I'm telling you this in an empty house. All the dogs are locked away. Hopefully they're not doing anything bad. If somebody is coming in the front door, I don't know it. You know, I'm blissfully ignorant. I love talking to you. You're adorable and brilliant. And this is great. Like, this is the best thing happened to me all day. So, but I could be dead in 5 minutes, you know? Well, but that's life. Life is like, oh, damn. Wait, I've COVID? Wait, my brother has COVID? Wait, you know. I love that. I think that's as visceral as the storytelling gets.
Wow. I love that you talk about books so much. And I read somewhere, or maybe you told me, that you loved Nancy Drew mysteries. And I was talking to this wonderful author that did a compendium where he asked all these different authors their favorite, or different people, their favorite books. And both Sonia Sotomayor and Ruth Bader Ginsburg said Nancy Drew. Well, they said Nancy Drew, but they love mysteries and they love mysteries. And I wonder about people like them, like you, who think about how they were inspired by these books when they were little and how it set them on a path for whatever happened later. They read them probably when they were 12.
That's exactly right.
They carried with them forever.
And I'll tell you the secret that I think it is. Here's my secret. Ready? You know, they always say in writing, the telling detail, there's a thing that readers remember. The thing about Nancy Drew is the roadster. Because to me, she's driving a car. Oh. That fact, think about that for a minute. She is in the driver's seat. She is not in the passenger seat. She's not being driven. There are so many scenes of Nancy Drew, when you start to go back and look, people remember the blue roadster. And I don't think it's for the car per se. It's for the act of a woman in control of her narrative and her life. She decides what the adventures are. She decides where to drive. And you never get away from that as a kid, at least for me. And by the way, let's be realistic. There weren't a lot of other books that had women leads. So it isn't a complete surprise that we all love Nancy Drew, because it was either her or Cherry Ames, which, you know, was kind of a little bit, look at me in my little white hat. You know, Nancy Drew had a sports car, man. So I secretly think that's what operated for me. I never forgot it. I love driving.
I've never heard anybody say that. And it makes so much sense. That's brilliant, because you're brilliant. And obviously you hit the nail on the head there.
You're too kind. I just think about this stuff a lot. And if we ever meet Justice Sotomayor, rest in peace, Justice RBG, that we will ask her, because I wonder, I really do.
Yeah. That's really interesting. Are you reading anybody right now? Or are you just doing research?
I'm sort of in research mode. I read a wonderful book about Sicily, though, that people might like, called The Florios of Sicily by Stefania Auci. Probably not someone who's gotten a lot of attention here, but I like to introduce people who...
I'm actually going to write that down.
Terrific. Here, I'll make it's holding up my laptop right now. But it's called The Florios of Sicily. And it's just terrific. It's really about Sicily. But I love stories like the Lehman Trilogy, another perfect example. The audiobook of that is astounding. Eduardo Bellerini read it, and he also did Bennett's I Requested Him because he's such a genius. Because if you pick it up, you might think it's intimidating because it looks like a poem, but it's not really a poem. Both books are the story of a family vis-a-vis your initial observation, and it's the story of a country through the lens of a family. Is that right? Really the other way around. The story of a country through the lens of the generations of a family. So the Lehman trilogy is about the Lehman banking family through its generations and it's an immigrant story of America. Obviously a Broadway play now, but Eduardo Ballerini is such a genius. There's only 3 parts. He does all 3. It's just mind-blowingly good. And The Florios of Sicily is similar. It's all about this famous family, nonfiction, but it's certain fictionalized, and how they relate as a family and how the family relates to the country. It doesn't get better than that. Wow. It just doesn't.
Now your family's from Italy as well, right? You have a blog, so you have a real connection to the country. Does any of your own family history stories play into this? No, because we're we're so badly behaved that but I think it will. I think it might by the end, because I love a good immigration story. I admire so much that my people came here, that people do come here, the hardship that people undergo. Can you imagine? Oh. And no, right? And so I love that I want to be that country that is there for people. I believe in, give me your tired, your poor. Yeah.
And there's so many Florios of Sicily. All of these books are about the dreams and hopes of people who happen to be born in places where you can't even hold up a sign that's blank or you get arrested. We're so lucky to be born here, and I'm grateful every day.
It's not something to take lightly, right?
No, not
right. Be able to read what we want and talk about these books and ideas.
Right. Say what we want, speak truth to power, write it, read it, newspapers, books.
Yeah. Now, will you be doing a book with your very, very talented daughter? Is Francesca gonna?
I hope to. She's working on her second novel after Ghosts of the Harvard, which you were so kind to mention. And at some point, we're going to wedge one in. I do write those humor columns, as she does. And if people, they're in the Philadelphia Inquirer, but people can read them on my Facebook page every Sunday morning or subscribe to my newsletter. I send it out for free. It's just a little bit of humor. It's my idea to just make you laugh during this dark, dark time and stay connected, all of us.
Wow. Well, you are such a gift. We are so lucky to have you. I can't believe how quickly this hour went. If you can believe it, I talked to you the whole time and didn't let anybody.
I love it. I love talking with you. You are just brilliant and totally fun.
We miss seeing you at the store. I'm really hoping that we will have you back out there.
I know. I'm almost finished this book, and I swear to God, by then it's got to break.
Yeah. And even if it doesn't, we'll just wrap you in bubble wrap and get you out here. And
you got it. You got it.
Promise you do that. I want to thank Zach, who is behind the scenes making us look like we know what we're doing out here. He's brilliant as always. And I want to thank everybody that turned up today for this really special talk with one of our very favorite people. There seriously is nobody I'd rather talk to than Lisa Scottoline. So I'm so happy to be here today with everybody that is here, and Lisa, with you. Thank you for being here with us. Congratulations on your new book, which is, everybody run out and get it. You need a book that you're going to absorb in one night, because you will not be able to put this one down.
Let me suggest you a wonderful bookstore they should get it from, which is Book Passage. And I will tell you, I forgot to say that it was actually picked by People Magazine for Book of the Week this coming week.
Oh, congratulations.
I'm very excited, but I really hope that I love your bookstore. People should know, if they don't know already, it is one of the best independent bookstores in the whole damn country. Please support it. Please get my book there or somebody else's book there, because we do need bookstores in our communities. And I'm just going to be real with you, because I'm from Philly, and man, you have to open your wallet and support them, or they will go away. And I think bookstores and communities, you want to have a place to take your kid and say, books matter. Here's a book, pick a book. There is no action is powerful, and there's no more powerful action than that. So I'm so grateful to you for having me. I hope you all support this incredible bookstore. I can't wait to get back out there. And thank you so much for doing it this way. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for everything you just said. Everybody, seriously, it's such a joy to speak with Lisa. It is just as much a joy to read her books. Do get her latest at Book Passage or your local independent bookstore. And we really thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much. And to give my best all around.
I will.
Thank you.